This time we're going to be taking a look at the Grunfeld, and we already had a light introduction to the Grunfeld structure in the King's Indian in the previous video. So C takes D5 and E4, where we're just going to get the classical Grunfeld setup, big center, where black's going to try to chip it away, and we're going to try to keep it intact. After bishop G7, knight F3. Should be noted that shouldn't worry about bishop G4. We're going to get solid position here. Bishop C4, big threat on F7, and D5, getting space. So after knight F3, C5 is the typical move, and you want to maintain the structure. Because keep in mind, these early moves of D takes C5 or D5, you always have to be watching, can I play it? And I don't really think you can get away with playing it in this structure. Bishop takes C3, and already the rook on A1 is a bit of a problem for you. So bishop E3, over supporting the center. Queen A5, and except black's playing against this big center, queen D2. We have absolutely no problems with black playing C takes D4, C takes D4, queen takes D2, king takes D2, which we'll see in future lines. It's very solid in-game and pretty easy for white to play overall, which is why I like this just solid and simple line versus the Grunfeld. So knight C6, and it looks like D5 is crying to be played. Don't make this mistake. Bishop takes C3, and you're already in big trouble. So first we're going to do this stutter step, and when I first analyzed this position, it was in the games of Grandmaster Varuj Nepovian, and he has a few videos playing against the Grunfeld on the St. Louis Chess Club YouTube channel, and they have absolutely amazing content. Definitely check out their stuff if you haven't been already. They're full-length games with annotations, typically by the Grandmasters or Strong Masters who played them. So I've learned a lot from that channel, so I highly recommend it. Rook B1 is the stutter step move to give black more room to go wrong before we play Rook C1 most of the time and then try to play for D5. So after Rook B1, let's first start with B6. And black simply trying to defend the B pawn so you can move the bishop, but we're able to apply some serious pressure. Bishop B5, now D5, move we want to play anyway. And after knight B8, takes, Rook C1, and on castles, we have Rook A8 and H4. And white has an absolutely commanding position here. Now, coming back, if black castles immediately, again, the benefit of Rook B5, or Rook B1 rather, Rook B5, takes. We get this very nasty game, and this is Jacobian Howell Chorus 2010, where white went on to win this one. And this is probably an excellent example game to study, as white really doesn't miss a beat with getting the most out of the position. And I really love the overall technique that Jacobian used to get the most out of it. He's such a solid and straightforward player that when looking at his games, he makes it look like easy and we can all play in this way, but it's quite difficult, and black had had enough here and resigned. So coming back, the main line, and after we see castles Rook B5, we begin to understand why A6 is the main line in the position. It prevents Rook B5. Now we simply stutter step Rook C1, and if it was white's move again, we would play D5. And that's really our overall goal. A6 is a concession, making the pawn structure weaker, so we're happy to waste a tempo there. CD, queen takes D2, king takes D2. And I should mention that if, say for instance, castles, we're happy to go D5, and I'm just going to play a nonsensical move, knight B8, to emphasize the idea that after C4, this is the dream structure that we're going for with white. because it's very difficult for black to completely chip away at this diamond type structure with the E and C pawns supporting the D5 pawn. And what you're going to find is in these endgames, especially if, let's say we get something like this, this is a dream structure for white. We have a passed D pawn forever. So in pretty much any endgame, that is going to be an advantage. So you're looking to trade down pieces effectively here and win the ending with that passed D pawn, which is a theme overall in the Grunfeld, which we'll see in some of our example games. So rook c1, takes, 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 takes. If f5 immediately, e5 shuts down the bishop. Our bishop goes to c4 in these lines. King e2, getting off any potential pins and nonsense. And we're just developing our pieces naturally and normally. e6 with the in-between move, knight f7. And white went on to win this one in Moscow 2019. 2470 versus 2643. And the main line being e6 here instead of f5. And this game comes from Aronian Nepo in the World Blitz Championship 2010. We will have some deviations before we get to the main continuation, but this line, especially because Nepo is one of the foremost experts on the Grunfeld in the world and one of the top players who plays it on a regular basis. And I felt like he fell into some really nasty preparation here, which ended the game quite quickly. d5 was played. So we get our pass pawn. And now, before we get on to the main event, which was knight e7, let's look at knight e5 first. And this is again going to exhibit how white's just got slightly better position and can press. And sometimes it presses all the way into a win. And this is following a game from 2014 between 2550 and 2600. So knight takes, bishop takes, g3. And I like this move because we're just looking to support our d-pawn without getting in the way of the rook. Bishop c5, pass pawns must be pushed. So we're looking to eliminate the blockader of the d-pawn. And in this endgame, notice how white's pieces are more active, especially the white king. And gotta love the better pieces in the ending. So we have secured a lot of the critical pawns on the opposite color of our bishop. And again, it's the type of game where white did little outside of opening theory, made some natural moves, and now just worked the pass pawns in the position, converting all the way to a win here, which we see. Main idea being takes, 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 b1, where the a pawn queens on the subsequent move, so it's understandable why black resigned before that happened. So, main event with Aronian and Nepo here. Knight e7. Well, unlike the previous variation with knight e5, takes, takes, and g3, we need to defend the pawn the best way we can. And after knight f5, bishop c5, which is another one of those critical moves that we're looking for. Even if black castles, this is a move in order to pin the knight, place pressure. This is keeping the king in the center. After check, you go, oh, well, bishop c5, we're giving up the exchange. This is the key idea. Is black's king stuck in the middle, and how is he developing his pieces effectively here? I'd say black's already in some reasonable trouble here. f6, rook e1 check. e6, hitting that weak f6 pawn. g4, and the pieces are just starting to get overworked. Check. Check. d6. We're happy to give up some material here. Bishop takes a6. Bishop b6. And white makes the rest of this look easy. And I believe Nepo resigned on knight takes g4 or ran out of time because it was World Blitz. but definitely you can see how the pieces coordinate quite well for white. So we gave up the exchange in order to put some serious pressure on our opponent. So there we have the overall overview of the Grunfeld. And again, hope you're enjoying the series. And there are a lot of lines versus the Grunfeld, but I feel that the theoretical best lines stem from the classical structure where we built the big center and we support it. And I believe that there's only really two ways the game can go here for white. Either black doesn't trade into the ending where our king gets excellent position, or he does. And if he doesn't trade, we're looking at that correct moment to play d5, get our extra space advantage, and work our d-pawn to victory. So, overview. Hopefully you guys are really enjoying it. I'm enjoying doing the series.